systematic terror attacks, Bill Gates, Henry Kissinger, New World Order mind control, Bank of America stealing homes with cut and paste mortgage loans, police, state, taser guns, FEMA camps, man run, Monsanto rules the food supply while Big Pharma dopes your mind. Prison system, puppeteers, foundations, fund the beers, fund the evil through the years, the world's not as it appears. CIA smuggles drugs while Wachovia and Wells Fargo launder them, then give the proceeds to the owners of the Federal Reserve Bank. Now the IRS takes money out of every single check. Money they created out of thin air and leave you with debt. They want to make you a serf, a slave to their demand. They want to take your life in every way they can. Fluoride, GMO, vaccines, chemtrails, United Nations genocide. The world they show us is not real. This is how they kill and steal. Rothschild, Bundy, Rockefeller, Club of Rome. On the Georgia Guidestones written in stone. Cut through the matrix, awaken to the lies. Do not be hypnotized. We are one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Good evening. Happy Memorial Day. This is Howard Nema, and you are watching Truth Talk News on truthbroadcastnetwork.com. Hope everybody had a very nice holiday weekend. Certainly got a lot of things done on my end. Starting off another week here. Managed to get some lawn work done, barbecued with some friends, had a rehearsal with the band. Did an abbreviated show on Saturday for We Are Change Connecticut on informedradio.com and projectfreedom.ws. So it was pretty busy. Didn't of course forget why we had this holiday extended weekend, for the remembrance of the sacrifices that soldiers have made for our country. The sacrifices made are I mean, you can't even quantify in any terms, monetarily or spiritually. People have lost their loved ones for mostly wars for corporate, at least in the last 100 years, for corporate interests, as opposed to real freedom and liberty. I think the biggest fraud is this war machine. Go back to Smedley Butler. It's a racket using patriotism to have people believe that war is, if you're against war or you're against the order of the establishment, you are not patriotic. Bush played that card. You're either with us or you're with the terrorists. That's an interesting oxymoron, right? Or double. It really doesn't matter. They're I don't know what else to say about that. But we have elements in our government who are using all the propaganda possible to enrich their positions and mind controlling the public with all of this patriotism, and it's very disturbing. It's very obvious. Obama and all these presidents, with their events at the unknown soldier's tomb, and all laying wreaths and throwing wreaths in the water, and the pomp and circumstance is just that, as far as this organization that we're trying to expose cares. I mean, we wouldn't be in any of these wars if it wasn't for these interests that we have elected officials senators and representatives from our states, supposedly to help get jobs and help the economy of our states individually, correct? Yet, undoubtedly, they are in the corporate interest pockets with corporations that are taking all the loopholes and shipping all the jobs out. You go on the website of the White House. I was downloading some some videos today, some public domain videos, and I was happy to find that All Quiet on the Western Front by Louis Milestone was a public domain video, and I'm going to take some pieces out of it and utilize it. Probably one of the greatest anti-war films that there ever was, that exposes the propaganda in such a great manner. However, and it's very obvious even today with a little more slicked off version of the way the media and using education to bring people towards these nationalism and patriotism, and do for the fatherland, and so to speak. Powerful film if no one's ever seen it. All Quiet on the Western Front, 1930, one of the first sound films. Probably the best war film that was ever made. You take Private Ryan, yeah, you go into that, but you really want to see where they got their mojo from. You look back and see that movie. It shows the horrors of war. It shows the futility of war. It shows that it's a lie. What the people telling them to go to war, the schoolmaster getting all these kids to enlist, as it was in World War I. And of course they find out that it's not some Boy Scout meeting. War is ugly. It's deadly. It is useless. It is, in the last century, with very few exceptions, it has been done to enrich and profiteer various interests. Vietnam, all of these coups the CIA implements and puts together, from the Shah of Iran down to Gaddafi, down to his demise. All of them have their heyday and then their demise. Controlling these people, working with them, again, covertly. This is what's going on. I mean, we have drones flying across our country. I mean, unmanned aircraft. The Department of Homeland Security has launched a program to facilitate and accelerate the adoption of small unmanned drones by police and other public safety agencies in an effort that faces a very big hurdle to have to do with privacy. Oh yeah, well, they're doing it already. Privacy is out the window. The Fourth Amendment is gone. They're going after the Second Amendment. I should talk about that. But this is what's going on. I mean, can you imagine this? I mean, what else? We're going to have little drones flying, okay? These little drones, okay? They look like something, I mean, it's a good target. I guess a good Mossberg 12 gauge, take that thing out real good, although I think they actually have armor shielding on them, so you'd have to use something with an armor-piercing bullet. Well, I mean, I don't know what to say about this. I just can't imagine having these small little, and there's a camera. If you look closely, there's a camera right here. There's a camera on the bottom. It's got the capability to shoot. It's got the capability to disable. Probably has all that technology. Shut your throat down so you can't breathe. Oh yeah, they're working hard for tyranny against us. Those that won't submit. You're going to submit or you're going to get hurt. Well, okay. Let's see how long this goes on. All I know is we have these programs that have been put into place by people that are now CEOs of the corporations that put all these drones and all these companies that make them and all these things in there, they're all in bed with the government. They work for the government. Like I said the other day, Michael Chernoff was the head of Homeland Security before Big Sis came in, Napolitano. All right. And he orchestrates, gets everything together for all these naked body scanners after they go after the Dawala, whatever that drugged out guy that they caught, the underwear bomber, that they put on the plane. Kurt Haskell, Kurt Haskell, the attorney, was there. He saw the whole thing. Again, swept under the rug. You're crazy, conspiracy theorist. Meanwhile, all these machines were purchased well in advance, because they had them all ready to go and line them up. And boom, sure enough, they came out there, and this is why we have to do it, and we have to do it. And then what happens? He steps down as Homeland Security Secretary, and Big Sis takes over, and what does he do? He becomes the CEO of Rapiscan, the very company that secured these contracts for the naked body scanners. All right, this is all true on record. Look it up. This is who we're dealing with. We are dealing with criminals. If this was your people that you were doing business with, and they were doing all this shady shit on the side, what would you feel? Wouldn't you want them arrested? Because they're stealing from you, and they're stealing from me. They're stealing from us, and they're killing us. I'm not going to go into how so much right now, because let's stay focused, but they are stealing from us. They are poisoning us. They are intent on enslaving us, keeping us under control, monitoring us with drones. It's not bad enough that they listen to every thing that we say, that they record everything, that the FBI is recording this very show as we speak, monitoring us, following us, putting tracking devices on us, wanting to chip everybody. I can just go on and on. I mean, I could literally, for the whole hour, I could just keep going on, rattling off these things that they're planning on doing. And they're implementing these one after the other. And, oh, you're crazy. The only person that's crazy is somebody that doesn't see it. They've lost the sense. They've lost the instinct of survival. I just can't even believe it. But it keeps going on and on. I mean, this is just one small little article. It's we're 11 minutes into the broadcast, and I mean, I could just spend the whole day on this. These drones flying around, and they want you to have chips in your driver's licenses, RFID, to identify you. They already have license plate checking technology. It's all to generate revenue. They say to keep you safe. All these checkpoints, driving around. All of a sudden, this week, they decide they're going to check everybody's seatbelt and do DWIs because it's a holiday weekend. Well, what does that mean? Shouldn't you be doing that all the time? Oh, you couldn't do that. The manpower would be outrageous, right? Well, then why specifically do it for a certain time? So you catch people and give them tickets, right? And the other times, let them go. Oh no, yeah, we have people that are doing drunk driving things and all that. Yeah, yeah, sure. But you target these weekends, these holidays, to give tickets. In fact, here in Connecticut, it's almost like a badge of honor. We had 550 speeding tickets and 3 DWIs and 6, and they actually announce it. Vance, the head of the state police. I mean, I hope I can reach out to. I mean, I know I have people in the force, and again, I applaud them, the ones that sit on Route 8, because you guys are some of them are really awake. I mean, they sit there, like 3/4 of a mile away. You could see them at night with their lights on. You could see them sitting there. They have the top lights just on, not flashing, just on. So, I mean, if you want to be an idiot and you want to speed past them, then you're going to get nabbed. You know? They're fair. And I tell you, it's just... again, the perception that they want the people to have is to be afraid of the police, to fear the police, that they're out to get you. That's one of the parts of this puzzle. Then the other part of it is that they want you to have all your faith in the state. The government has to help you. You can't help yourself. So they want you to be afraid of the authorities, but at the same time, they want you to be dependent upon them. I mean, it's just a really twisted dichotomy. That's the right word to use. It's in contradiction with itself. However, it works quite well. I mean, generally speaking, the people that are on the state's tit, for lack of a better word, a lot of them have problems with the law. A lot of them are of lower income. A lot of them have serious drug problems. I mean, these are all, you can call them stereotypical things, or you can just call them statistics, however you want to call them. They are what they are. And then you have to identify how they want to continue having this downward motion of bringing people of means that have families and homes and property to slowly have to lose and get more and more dependent upon state programs that get bloated. And these state programs in the 25 states are handled by Chase, 25 are handled by Bank of America. This is all on record. Check it out. So, I mean, this control is right there, and it's tight, and the people resist, and they have to give up a little bit. They have to renege on some of the things. But if we allow them to continue to take our rights, I mean, $5 Bank of America wanted to charge. And everyone went wild, and they got them to stop doing it. I mean, that's a good thing. Things like that we have to continue. Now they're threatening to bring it back, and there's no problem. No, we're going to do it anyway. Well, yeah, it's all this sort of like, almost like mumbo-jumbo, like, you know, game that they're playing. Back and forth with these companies with their, you know, I'll raise this, and then, well, the people are going to fight back, and then we'll see what we can get away with. Isn't that how it works? I mean, they raise fees and people went wild. Because how can they? Because it's, I mean, come on. It's all about, they can't take a haircut. They can't lose a dime, these criminals. They have to just, I mean, they've stolen all of this money from the Federal Reserve. Every single dollar that's been printed since 1913 has been putting us into debt. They bankrupted America. The government was bankrupt by 1933, only 20 years after founding the Federal Reserve. They gave up the gold and used the gold as collateral on the debt that the bankers created, and the bankers created the Depression, of course. They're doing the same thing again. This is the same. They do this over and over again. Now it's slow. Now, oh yeah, we're gonna have some growth and all that. Well, no, the bottom has not fallen out yet. As bad as it's been for so many folks, people out of work for 2 years, unfortunately, we have a major, major problem. And the whole economic system is going to collapse. I was talking about this with a friend, and we don't know, of course, when. You know, it could be weeks, months, or at the least a few years, at the longest, I should say. I mean, I'm hoping that we have enough time that we can wake people up to that the real people of the criminals, because when they come to fix this thing with their solution of this new debt or this new currency, new fiat system, or new way to enslave us, new debt-based money system, something else, giving up sovereignty because of all the debt, world government, all of these things will be screaming the people that are awake, and we have to wake more people up. They're coming after us really, really hard. It's like, I mean, every single day they put a little, it's like death by 1,000 cuts. And even with me talking about having some financial issues, there was an article I have someplace here. Yeah, Jim Cramer from Goldman Sachs, the paid shill, who's on there trying to say, oh yeah, give everybody investment advice, leading everyone down the paths that they want people to go down. Interestingly, I mean, it's just ridiculous how people can be controlled. He is predicting bank runs in Spain and Italy and financial anarchy throughout Europe. Well, he's not alone. So I'll just mention that because a lot of people know that. This is from The Economic Collapse, written by Michael Snyder. Cramer, of course, boldly predicted financial anarchy is coming and there will be bank runs in Spain in the next few weeks. I see that coming too. I see there being more unrest in the Middle East. These are very turbulent times. And there's going to be something else. I sense this false flag coming. I sense this big event that they're going to use to help usher in this new world order. The world government. Very, very disturbing. So anyway, Jim Cramer is not alone in his thoughts. In Greece, recent elections failed to produce a new government, so there's going to be new elections in June, on June 17th. Many EU politicians are trying to turn these elections into a referendum on whether Greece stays in the Eurozone or not. That's the whole idea of what they're going to be doing with their currency and such. If the next Greek government is willing to honor the austerity agreements, oh God, that have been previously agreed to, then Greece will probably stay in the Eurozone for a while longer. If the Greek government is not willing to honor the austerity agreements that have been previously agreed to, then Greece will probably be forced out of the Eurozone. Lots of bad things ahead here, unfortunately. The money's running out. And if they run out of money and the rest of Europe cuts the flow, Greece would essentially be forced to leave the euro. And it could be a really tremendous problem with their banking system. Struggling to survive as hundreds of millions of euros are getting pulled out of it. It's straining hard for cash. I mean, this is really bad. It's a house of cards. I mean, so is the Ponzi scheme known as the Federal Reserve criminal syndicate. It's coming. I wish it weren't. I wish we had, Chantilly 100 years. But we don't. It took 100 years to get us here. It might take us 100 years to get us back. Same amount of generations. Although they did it stealthily, and we're waking people up quickly. I hope that we can turn this ship around. All of the wars and all of the problems and all of these false flags and false scarcity and genocide by saying that they're doing humanitarian assistance through the United Nations, and Bill Gates vaccinating children instead of giving them clean water and food. There comes a critical mass where the people just, will wake up out of their trance. It's just you got to wonder if it can happen before they really start clamping down. All these signs lead to closing society at a rapid pace. I'm going to just refer, because I have it right here, to a piece by Eustace Mullins from The World Order. That would be, I think, very interesting. And I'm going to use the next few minutes to just go through it. It's only a couple of pages. But it has to do with the way the Obama administration and even the Republicans, okay, by the way, back to being a libertarian, thank God, it's a Marxist, communist agenda, moving towards it's a blend of communism and fascism that they're moving us into here. And Mullins' work is just fantastic. And again, going back to the Communist Manifesto, we have all of this information here. For example, how it's worked in, say, my own generation. Or I'm, in my 40s here, so in my generation, I was a child when I was a little bit, just about born, or a little older than that. The 1971 list of trustees of the Rockefeller Foundation shows that it continues to be the ruling hierarchy in the U.S. It included all of these big names, people like Vernon Jordan, people like Cyrus Vance, Secretary of State under Carter, Robert Russa, and Cy Vance are founding members of the Trilateral Commission. And while he was on the staff of the Federal Reserve Bank, Robert Russa trained a group known as the Russa Bloc. The chief protege being Paul Volcker. Does that name ring a bell? Former Federal Reserve. See, it's all a family thing too. It's all, again, this bloodline thing. As chairman of the Federal Reserve Board of Governors, he unleashed a ruinous recession in the United States with 20% interest rates and 25% inflation, which is true. Of course, the banks profited handsomely while driving millions of Americans into bankruptcy. Does this sound familiar? Isn't this what they did now? But now, instead of it being using the inflation and the interest, they just hid the debt, created derivatives, had prosperity, and then hid all of this debt through the prosperity. And then when it came time to pay the banker, quote unquote, they were busted and they had to get bailed out. So it's just another way they manipulate to steal everything. This is what they do. They conspire and work to control everything. Bottom line. Now, the New York Times reported that David Rockefeller and Robert Russa suggested to President Carter that he appoint Volcker as chairman of the Federal Reserve Board. Now, Russa is a partner in Brown Brothers Harriman and a director of Texaco, American Express, Owens Corning Fiberglass, and the director of the National Bureau of Economic Research. He's also a trustee of Sloan Kettering Institute, another Rockefeller-funded cancer. That's the premier cancer place to go and get poisoned by radiation and chemotherapy and everything else. Okay, part of this big pharma medical mafia fraud. Okay? Now, the Brookings Institute, which was incorporated in 1927 by Frederick Delano, Harold Moulton, and economist Leo S. Rowe, who had been Assistant Treasury Secretary working closely with Eugene Meyer and the War Finance Corporation, Chief of Latin American Division of the State Department from 1919 to 1920, when they were doing all of that Latin America stuff that General Smedley Butler was talking about, war being a racket. He went down there to help out with Standard Oil and their interests. All right, is it all getting clear to everybody? Keep digging. This is all truth, and it's coming to you here on Truth Talk News on truthbroadcastnetwork.com. Just about coming down to the half an hour point. We got another half an hour to go. Be joining Harry Link will be joining us at 10 p.m. with Death to the New World Order, and probably we'll be chiming in maybe a little bit, dovetailing together today before his show begins. Keeping with this whole important little bit of information, which I think will go for the next 10 minutes or so, going back to the Brookings Institution. Now, this is, again, it's a think tank, pretty much puts together all of this protocol. Now, how do they do these things? How do they come up with all these ideas like I'm talking about? Well, places like the Brookings Institute, others, depending upon the application, like you have the Stanford Institute, which is again for the mind control. But going back here now, the close connection again, like I was saying with Smedley Butler and this whole thing with all these people being close to the Federal Reserve and war and the whole connection between the military-industrial complex and the bankers. Now, Eugene Meyer and the War Finance Corporation, as I said, he was also, Leo Rowe was also the director of the Pan American Union from 1920 to 1936. So he was the coordinator of all of the operations down there. All right. Now, the Brookings Institution was founded by Robert Brookings. I'm not going to go into his big background, but I mean, he was born in 1850, unmarried, a St. Louis merchant, head of the Couples Corporation, which revolutionized the distribution of goods from railway stations. That's how he got rich. In World War I, Brookings was Baruch's assistant at the War Industries Board, which had dictatorial powers over American industrialists, and chairman of the Price-Fixing Committee of the WIB. An original trustee of the Carnegie Endowment for International Peace, Brookings set up the Brookings Graduate School of Economics, which merged with the Institute of Government Research and the Institute of Economics in 1927. It was now formed into the present Brookings Institution. It is listed as not a membership organization whose goal is to set national priorities. In short, to make government policy, which it does, to set national priorities, in short, to make government policy. It rode into power with Roosevelt's New Deal. And actually, it was interesting because it's hardly a surprising fact, since the incorporator, Frederick A. Delano, was FDR's uncle. How nice, how convenient, how close, how in the family. Isn't it just loving? Now, the present chairman, Robert Russa, and that was actually present was in 1985. He's no longer. This is all again from Eustace Mullen's work, The World Order, 1985. In 1984, Brookings Institution originated a new program for the government written by a team of 10 economists headed by Alice Rivlin, former director of the Congressional Budget Office. Now, Rivlin proposed that the income tax be replaced or augmented by a consumption tax laid upon all consumptions, bequests, and gifts. In short, the traditional left-wing Brookings Institution hoped to enact these laws, enact the law of the illegal IRS technique of composite net worth, laying an extra income tax on citizens by estimating what they spend or consume, which is what we're doing now with the carbon taxes, right? Everyone's going to pay a tax, okay, on what they consume, their little carbon footprint, right? See how things from the past, not so distant either, only 25 years ago, right? 27 years ago, and how clear it is today, and happening, and even more prevalent, and more, of course, in the public eye, thanks to people getting this information out, thanks to people like Harry Link and people like Pam Suggs at UnitedTruthSeekers.com and others that take their time to wake the people up to the truth, researching, Chris Freedom Flowers, others, go on and on and on. Again, Bobby K, Project Freedom.ws. I mean, I'm not going to go into this whole thing and be it'd be endless. But see the connection? Carbon taxes, a new way to tax us, global warming, a new fraud. Okay, and that comes up soon. Actually, it's brought up in some of this. Now, what they wanted to do is figure out a way to grind the working man into hopeless poverty through ruthless extortion by government agents. I love that. That was Eustace Mullen's words. That's a great example. In 1978, corporations gave Brookings $95,000. In 1984, this figure pumped to $1.6 million, and most of the $13 million budget continues to be paid by the major foundations: Ford, Rockefeller, Carnegie, Milbank Memorial Fund. The foundations work together not only because of their close interlockingness, but because they have a common program. That program was published by Karl Marx, getting back to this, talking about Karl Marx, in 1848, and it was known as the Communist Manifesto. Now listen to this frightening, this really freaked me out. I got sort of chilly because they're doing so much of this to us right now, and I'll explain after each of these bullet points. Abolition of all property and land. Okay? Well, basically they're making it that way. Between the credit problem, the crunching of the middle class, the poor, people can't afford to, their foreclosures are on the rise, still. People are still out of work, they're losing their homes. This is how they're going to continue to do this, to make it harder and harder to obtain the home. Harder and harder for people to scrounge the money together to get it. If it doesn't come from a relative or from an inheritance, the average worker isn't going to be able to buy a house. And they're going to be dependent upon the state. And that's the purpose. Again, this is their goal. Stated goal. Now, the application of rents to land and public purposes. So the money that you pay to the state. A heavy progressive or graduated income tax. Well, we're just talking about that. Abolition of all rights of inheritance. We're just talking about that too. I mean, they're already like talking about ways to, take away the wealthy's money. They get the people that don't have anything to hate the wealthy as if it's like a crime to be successful, which is terrible. If you have a couple of bucks, you got $1 million or $2 million, and you're happy to have that, and you're lucky to have that. It's your property. It's your right. Nobody should have to take that from you, or you shouldn't have to pay any more tax than anyone else. For that matter, people that are paying no tax shouldn't complain about what they don't have. People that are paying taxes, and the others are, and in proportion, disproportionately, I think that is the only problem. But more or less, the wealthy do already pay the higher tax rates, so it's a fraud. It's like, what are you gonna? How much? You can't tax these people to death either. So they are the ones that make the jobs, especially. They are. I mean, who else creates jobs but people that make, between $250 and $1 million a year? Unless they're a CEO, and if you want to tax CEOs, go for it. You want to tax these banker criminals, go for it. Obama's going to, all of a sudden, because it's an election year, he's going to close the loopholes for the oil companies and start taxing them. Yeah, right. Now it is. What happened in 2008, 9, 10, 11, and now? Why didn't you do it then? All of a sudden, this comes to you. It's a brilliant idea. Just insane. Anyway, confiscation of property of immigrants and rebels. Well, they're already doing that with the I don't know about immigrants, but they sort of let the immigrants come running wild in this country, illegally at least. Rebels. That would be us, I guess. The National Defense Authorization Act, 1031, 1032, Cybersecurity Act, things like that. People that are against the government, people that are against tyranny, are obviously rebels. Yes, people that want freedom, liberty, and God's inalienable rights are the problem. Centralization of credit in the hands of the state by means of a national bank with state capital and exclusive monopoly. Oh, well, they want that, and they're moving towards it quickly in this world government. And that's what's coming. That's where they're moving it. The IMF Bank. Oh God, it goes on and on. The feds are going to have this end of the year Federal Reserve charter on the 21st. It just expires. I don't know. They're not really saying what they're going to be doing, but they're going to do something. So something's going to happen on the 21st of December of this year. Charter, does it have a provision to automatically renew? I don't know. But we should all start talking about it since it exists. And could be a big thing. Now, the extension of factories and instruments of production owned by the state, bringing into cultivation of wastelands and improvement of the soil, generally in accordance with a common plan, Agenda 21. This is Agenda 21. And the carbon taxes. And the green. The footprints. Equal obligation of all to work. Well, the provisions on these anti-constitutional, illegal laws and orders and executive orders that have been written and passed, having forced labor if you're in one of these FEMA facilities, even if you're not a criminal, it's just to force you to work. I don't even know how to address that, because all these things are, you know, they're happening. They're there. Establishment of industrial armies, especially for agriculture. The Green Police, the FDA attacking milk farmers. Combination of agriculture with manufacturing industries. Monsanto working together. Gradual abolition of distinction between town and country by more equitable distribution of population over the country. Well, they're already doing that. They want to have everybody packed together again. Agenda 21. Free education for all children in public schools. They're already at that. Department of Education, digging right into that. Combination of education with industrial production, which is basically just to make good workers. Like Rockefeller said, we don't need thinkers, we need workers. Abolition of child labor in its present form. So they don't want children to work, yeah. Right. Anyway, the foundations never oppose or contradict a single plank of the Communist Manifesto, and the program is given vocational training instead of education, which is a different form of child labor. Present directors of Brookings includes Lewis Cabot of Cabot Corp., Director of Federal Reserve Bank of Boston, R.R. Donnelly, Owen Corning Fiberglass, as I went over and over again, Rand McNally, oh my God, Lehman Brothers, Lehman Institute. It's just an incredible work. Everybody can read it. I mean, it's a tremendous piece. I don't want to go too far into it, but there's so much. All these other foundations, heavy representation of the Morgan and Rockefeller directors on the boards of Brookings explain the relentless drive of the big rich to increase taxes and government control over the average American citizen. The business section of the New York Times, April 15, 1984, long in advance of the election, carried a headline story on the business page that whoever wins in November, there will still be a $100 billion increase for U.S. taxpayers. Of course, but they're bantering, oh, you're going to do this and you're going to do that. It's going to happen no matter what. That's the lie. That's how everyone's these right-left false paradigm. Another major U.S. foundation, the Russell Sage Foundation, was incorporated in 1907 by Daniel Coit Gilman and Cleveland H. Dodge. A director of National City Bank, Dodge masterminded the presidential campaign of Woodrow Wilson after subsidizing his academic career at Princeton with a $5,000 a year from himself, with a $5,000 a year payment from himself and Moses Pine, grandson of the founder of National City Bank, Rockefeller. In 1980, the Russell Sage Foundation had assets of $52 million and expenditures of $2 million. Sage was a Wall Street speculator who made a fortune in railroad stocks. Nicholson's biography of Dwight Moorer notes that it had always been a tradition in the partners of J.P. Morgan should engage in all forms of public and charitable activity. So Morrow was a trustee of the Russell Sage Foundation and director of the National Bureau of Economic Research. The present chairman of the Russell Sage Foundation, which is probably not the same one, is someone named Herma Hill Kay, who was a leading women's rights organizer in 1985, and a trustee of the Rosenberg Foundation. Now, all these foundations were working together to move this thing along, and interestingly enough, Marshall A. Robinson, who is also a director of the Ford Foundation and director of Herbert Hoover's Belgian American Education Foundation, and also directors of the Russell Sage are Robert McCormick Adams, who replaced Dillon Ripley as head of the Smithsonian. Ripley was a OSS agent from 1942 to 45, a Guggenheim Fellow, a Fulbright Fellow, and a National Science Foundation Fellow. All these people were principal organizers of Eaton's Pugwash conferences, which were run by the KGB. How's that? Adams is moving to a new $485,000 mansion, which was voted him by the Smithsonian Board, as the new class likes to live well. That's interesting. Very funny. So yes, they've been doing this for a long, long time, working towards this communist world government, fascist government, backing fascism, backing communism over the years, backing coups and backing dictators and uprisings and revolutions. It's par for the course. It's their business practice. This is what they do. Again, could go on and on about this, but I thought it was important to see the connection to these bankers and the military-industrial complex, considering that so many young men and women lost their lives as a result of these criminals who have funded the Bolshevik Revolution. Again, that's a little touched on here. These people were all related to the American embassy in Petrograd during the Bolshevik Revolution, and he later wrote the diary of the Russian Revolution, a guy named James Hofletang. And these people are all the same players. And their progeny, their children, they move on and continue the order. Like Cecil Rhodes, Rockefeller, and the others, J.P. Morgan and the Rothschilds put foundations together which would carry out the programs of the world order. The Carnegie Institution of Washington was incorporated in 1909. It goes on and on and on. By Daniel Coit Gilman, Cleveland Dodge, Frederick Delano, Andrew Dickinson White, Elihu Root, Darius Ogden Mills, and William E. Morrow. James Shotwell ably represented the goals of the world order for more than 60 years. He was born in Canada in 1874 and joined the staff of Columbia University in 1900 as a professor of history. In 1916, he was invited by Colonel House. Oh, got Harry calling in. Harry Link from Death to the New World Order. Harry!
Hey, how you doing, Howard?
Good evening, good evening. Just chatting a little bit about these people that, we always talk about the New World Order, but I was trying to sort of show who they are and how they work together. Thanks to Eustace Mullins' great work, The World Order. I don't know if you've ever read that.
The truth is, I don't do a lot of reading when it comes down to it. A lot of what I do is instinct, but I wanted to touch base with you about a couple things.
Sure.
I'm going to be leaving for Bilderberg in the morning, and I want to make sure that I let you know, because I'll try and touch base with you, during your show throughout the week, if that's all right.
Absolutely, of course. Calling in is, of course, definitely.
All right.
So we'll, of course, especially you can give some reports from Bilderberg, see what's going on. I was going to get into that a little too, so it should be an interesting weekend, I'll tell you that much. Very early this year.
Yeah. I mean, I have absolutely no idea how it's going to go, and I think it'll be interesting. One of the most, interesting things to me is to see how, for instance, Alex Jones behaves, because when I was in New York, I spotted a lot of operatives, and I'm going to be keeping an eye on him and seeing if, he's in any way trying to control things, or if he's just out there. Is he trying to be the center of attention or whatever? So, I'm not going there for that reason, obviously, but I'm going to, kind of look at that. And I mean, I just wanted to touch base with you also and find out what you thought I should be, looking out for, and what you'd do if you were there.
Well, considering the information and the things that are on record and the facts, I don't want to get too much into it about certain things. I would be very cautious about Alex Jones and watching how this whole thing unfolds because of the COINTELPRO situation, because of his relationship to Anthony Hilder, and I'm sort of concerned about it. I don't want to bash him because he's given me a lot of truth. I've got a lot of good information that he led me to. But there's also the undeniable facts of various things that make you wonder. So an ounce of truth is all you need to get somebody to believe in you, and without anybody having the research. If you don't do the research and you just listen to someone, you're parroting, or or worse, you're just you're making somebody an icon. And then again, just the fact that he has such control over various things and access. I mean, how is it possible? Just really think about it. How is it possible unless there's some connection, or he wouldn't be able to do the things he's doing without having the kind of attacks that we're getting and the type of things that happen to us. And I know he says, well, I don't talk about it and all that and la la la, and that was years ago. And, well, I don't know. Considering now that I know that Anthony Hilder is a CIA operative that was a COINTELPRO agent and Alex sells his films, it makes you wonder, man. I just said that. I'm not, I have no proof, but except for the words of the man. I mean, the famous thing that comes to mind with me is the New Year's Eve Millennium broadcast where he was lying about all this stuff. I guess it could just be for ratings, but it's disinformation. He was trying to cause a panic. It was like War of the Worlds type stuff. I mean, saying nuclear bombs and shit, nuclear reactors, some problems, all sorts of lies, other things. But again, I don't focus on this. I think that,
Right.
The important thing is that he is the only person out there, and I'll give him credit for this, that's really
that's
punching
one of the things
through.
that scares me is the fact that he's like one of the only.
He is sort of the only one, which
He's
makes you wonder.
corrupted, then the movement's basically fucked. So I think we've got to get as many people out there, as seen as leader. That's what we're missing. We're missing leadership. We've got one top dog, and he could lead everybody off a cliff at any moment, and that really, scares me to death. But I don't want to talk about that. I just
No, absolutely not. I'm not either. I don't.
I want to talk about is what do you think is the point? I mean, for instance, we know we're going to watch them drive in, we're going to watch them drive out. People like me, idiots like me, are going to be on the bullhorn. But what is really the point of it all besides just basically showing other people not to be afraid to confront them? I mean, how do you see this? Do you see this as effective resistance?
Well, I think that it is effective resistance because, it's like a big stone, and we've been chipping it away for many years. Because just 10 years ago, Bilderberg didn't exist. You were, written off as a conspiracy nut completely 10 years ago. And now it's the media is even admitting it, as much as sheepish as they have to be, but they are admitting it, that it exists. They don't. They of course downplay it, like they downplay everything. But they can't. There is definitely a Bilderberg. And people now are, well, what is that Bilderberg? And so it is raising awareness. What can we do? I mean, these guys are going in there to see how much they could set the oil prices, to see about having war with Syria and Iran. We know what they're doing. I mean, this is what they do. So if we can awaken people to that and get the information out, and then especially when it comes true, when these things there's some, they're planning something. You know that. I know that. I don't know what it is, but they're planning something big. There's a lot of stuff that's going to happen. They got the banking issues going on here. They have the collapsing of the Greeks and the Greek bank, and oh my God, the whole Greek economy. They also have all of these derivatives that are in the entire Euro. The Europe is going to collapse. I mean, it's perfect for them. It's ripe for the picking. So something's
Well,
going to happen.
I think you nailed it right there when you say it's all about the awakening, and that's what I'm going there for.
Exactly.
Is to inspire other people to stand up and stop being afraid. Stop watching American Idol and thinking, well, if I don't say anything, nothing will happen to me. That is no longer an option. Our backs are definitely up against the wall with all the legislation they're passing, and we've got to start actively resisting.
No doubt. Absolutely. The fact is that they are going to continue to put these laws in place. They continue to lie. All these things are going to continue. And the fact of the matter is that all of the troubles, all the things that they talk about, never focuses on the real problem. You know, they never focus on the problem. Oh, the problem is we have a debt-based money system. The problem is that our dollar has been devalued by design. The problem is all our jobs are being taken overseas. All of a sudden, Obama wants to lift these restrictions on drilling, and all of a sudden he wants to tax the oil companies and close their loopholes. Well, what happened? Like I just said a few minutes ago, what happened in 2008 when he got elected? Why didn't he do it then? You know, it's just we have to wake them up and get them out of this matrix that they think that that these Madison Avenue slick willies are gonna save America. It's horseshit, you know.
And now I think definitely you make a good point when you say it wasn't long ago they denied the Bilderbergs ever existed. Now it's acknowledged they exist, and basically it's public knowledge now that they're openly violating the Logan Act. We all remember pictures of our Secretary of Treasury, Timothy Geithner, at the last Bilderberg meeting in open defiance of the United States Constitution. So I mean, it seems like slowly we're creeping to this 2 + 2 = 5 phase where people know and they're just afraid to talk about it or afraid to even admit it to themselves.
Well, that's it. I mean, look, Hillary Clinton was fined, like a couple of $100,000 for attending Bilderberg. Now we have these people. They're traitors. They are traitors. Obama's a traitor. All of these people are traitors. The Constitution is being pissed on. And I mean literally pissed on, and the propaganda is outrageous all over the place, and I just can't even I'm trying to put it into words, trying to discover how to say how absolutely mind fucked, I think that's the only word I can use, the public is about this thing, and they think it's going to be, well, Romney will make it better. Romney's going to make it better. I mean, what? Are you kidding me? These are the same people. Look at who's contributing to their campaigns. It's the same people. Look who the interests are. Like I was going through the world order. Who the players. They're all the same people. They're doing this. Nothing happens by accident. Franklin Roosevelt said that himself. There are no coincidences, is what he said. There are no coincidences.
Right.
Believe it. If it happened, they made it happen. And that's I think that's a fair assessment when you look at history. And then they say, you're a conspiracy theorist, you're a nut. Well, how can that be when all of these things have happened and they've been caught lying over and over again? The Gulf of Tonkin incident never happened, ever. Started the Vietnam War. The U.S. Liberty attacked by Israel. They denied that ever happened. People were shot. I mean, this is insane, and then you're a conspiracy theorist. The CIA doing all sorts of mayhem with Operation Gladio, blowing up school buses and stuff, and train stations in Italy, and blame it on the Red Brigades, the Russians, the communists. I mean, false flag is every day. 9/11. My God, the first time. 1993, then 9/11. They gave them in 1993. They gave the bomber the bomb. The FBI gave him the bomb. Let him blow it up. Let's go. I mean,
well, it's like they say: the greater the lie, the more people will believe it. And I mean, I know it took me a while to fully wake up because it was just so unbelievable. The lie was so massive that it was almost impossible to finally come to terms with the fact that it was true. But once you do, it all comes cascading down. So if there's anybody out there on the fence, do your freaking research, man.
That's it. You just have to research it. It is all true. I mean, everything we're saying is true, and I don't know how else to put it. But then you keep going, like all of these events. You have somebody like Larry P. McDonald, who was literally had through his freedom associations, his liberty associations in the 1980s. Now again, he was the nephew of General George Patton. If people aren't aware, that Larry P. McDonald was a congressman, a Democratic congressman from Georgia. However, he had very, very what would be considered radical right-wing people. They called him a racist even, but he really wasn't. They labeled him with all this stuff. He was a constitutionalist. He thought that the government was out of control, the Council on Foreign Relations and the Rockefellers. He went on crossfire with Tom Braden and exposed the Rockefeller Foundation and the control over the CFR, over the State Department and policy. And then he was killed. He died. Now, it's like one thing, like, oh, he had a car accident, he drowned in a pool, or maybe a CIA type of thing, like fell out of a window. No, he was actually shot down on the very plane that the Soviets chose to shoot down on Korean Air 007. Can you imagine that? He happened to be on that plane, happened to be going to Korea to speak at a Liberty a thing for the John Birch Society. He was the head of the John Birch Society, and they just happened to kill him. And they just never found the plane ever. They never found his body. And then 10 years later, they found the flight recorder. So this is how it works. This is how they roll.
Well, see, to me, that brings up an interesting thing, though, which is, for instance, why did they wait so long to kill Bill Cooper? Why are they letting us stream this out over the internet now? Why aren't we already shut down? I mean, why are they allowing us to make the progress bar? Why are they allowing us to get right up there in their face in Bilderberg? I mean, it seems to me like they're allowing the awakening to some extent. What's your opinion on that?
Yeah, that's sort of a frightening... I thought about that myself. You got to wonder, because my only rationalization of it would be that, well, they're not ready to, like, it's a game of chess, Harry, and right now it's like they're in the stage of setting up the pieces, so everyone's moving around on the chessboard, but meanwhile they're putting all their pieces in the proper place, and hopefully they're distracting you with other things they're doing, and that's what they're hoping to do. And then once everything is in place, I think they are going to just, use some sort of an event to blame it on the liberty movement, on the patriot movement, just like Cooper said, and then start cracking down. And
that's exactly what Bill Cooper was expecting after 9/11. He was on high alert after that, and then they didn't do it. And so maybe that is the plan, and they're just holding off.
In other words, I think you could fairly say, again, a tremendous researcher that Cooper was, an intelligence officer. He had intelligence contacts in the military and in naval intelligence that were current at the time of his death. So he knew what was going on. He had the greatest civilian intelligence network in the second to only the U.S. government, and that's a fact. So when he discovered this probably was their plan. In my view, their plan was to do something. But Bill again had a big mouth. He went on there for 8 hours and did a tremendous broadcast. If no one's ever listened to that, Google it. Go to YouTube and Bill Cooper 8-hour broadcast on 9/11 as it happened, and it's an unbelievable thing. A lot of this stuff didn't happen that he was considering, but what happened by stating things, I think he prevented a lot of things from happening, to be honest. And I think that's one of the reasons they killed him, because then they couldn't let that stuff happen that they might have been planning to do, because he had exposed it, and if it happened, then it would give credibility to him. So I think that's why.
I need you to say that again for those of us who are on medications, because it's a little confusing.
Okay. For those of us on medications, basically, I think what was happening that Cooper had exposed through his very, very good connections with intelligence, a potential plot that they were looking to utilize. And he exposed it by things that he was saying. For example, about blaming it on patriot movements, about all these different scenarios that might have occurred that did not occur. Yet, a month or two later, actually less than 2 months later, he was killed. Now, if any of the things that he had talked about happened in that proximity of time, it would have probably given credence to what he was saying and what he was warning us about. And now that the FEMA camps are being ramped up, and Rex 84 and other laws that have been put into place that were upset up there were put on hold because of Bill Cooper. He did probably put the entire New World Order on hold. I believe that. I believe that.
Well, it does make sense, and like I said, the only thing I can't understand is why they waited so long to kill him, unless it was part of the plan to cause the awakening with, the Matrix movie, V for Vendetta. A lot of it seems orchestrated, but, I mean, it's definitely debatable from a lot of different positions on all that.
Yeah, I don't even understand why they're so arrogant when we know they're arrogant, but they're right in your face with these movies, and the Illuminati, the symbolism, the Masonic symbolism, it's everywhere, and especially the storylines. I mean, we're talking about killing people, blowing stuff up, terrorism before. Look at all the movies about the terrorism in the late 90s before, leading up to 9/11. It was like to get everybody to hate the Arabs, because all the terrorists were always Middle Eastern people. Interesting, right? Like in the movie like True Lies, which was a Cameron film. I went over that yesterday. Cameron's big connection to this whole plot. So I think that you have this wide spectrum, Harry, as you know, and it's difficult to be precise. But for damn sure that they're not out there, thinking, well, we're just going to help everybody, and we're going to do good for humanity, and we're going to find cures for cancer, and we're going to make sure that everybody lives a long, healthy life, and and that their children will have a better life than them. Oh, they don't want that. That they don't want. That's the dream that they tell us to go for. That's what they want us to all strive for and achieve, while they work to do exactly the opposite, to kill us, to stifle us.
But, the way they do things, it almost seems plausible. Oh, they're just philanthropical. They're just looking out for the good of humanity. We are overpopulated, and people do need chemo and radiation. They're just trying to save you. Go run 3.1 miles to fight cancer. And everybody thinks everything's on the up and up because they're, generally people are good, and they don't suspect that there's these dark motives to these people who are acting like they are also good people. So, people just buy it hook, line, and sinker, and they need to just be more suspicious, a lot more.
That's absolutely true. Well, listen, Harry, again, I want to thank you for allowing me to broadcast Monday through Thursday here from 9 to 10 p.m. on truthbroadcastnetwork.com, and it's always nice to dovetail with you. I guess I'll be signing out and letting you go on your with your show. But thank you again it was a great week, and looking forward to more heads up from Bilderberg when you're calling in on that. When are you leaving?
I'll be leaving tomorrow, and I'll be meeting people. I shouldn't say this, but I'll be meeting
don't say where.
People in Wheeling, Virginia, and driving from there. But, I feel bad you thanking me for being on the network, Howard, because, you're a major part of the network. I thank you for being part of it. I can't do this alone, and that's what I decided. I've been trying to do it alone for a year, and I realized I can't do it. People can't watch me 24 hours a day. I need other people, and you're absolutely the most reliable, the most dependable, and the most committed. So I thank you for being a part of the network, Howard, and you have a good night.
Well, thank you. You too, Harry, and death to the New World Order.
Death to the New World Order.
Take care. Good evening. Happy Memorial Day. This is Howard Nema, and you are watching Truth Talk News on truthbroadcastnetwork.com. Hope everybody had a very nice holiday weekend. Certainly got a lot of things done on my end. Starting off another week here. Managed to get some lawn work done, barbecued with some friends, had a rehearsal with the band, did an abbreviated show on Saturday for We Are Change Connecticut on informedradio.com and projectfreedom.ws. So it was pretty busy. Didn't of course forget why we had this holiday extended weekend, for the remembrance of the sacrifices that soldiers have made for our country. The sacrifices made are I mean, you can't even quantify in any terms, monetarily or spiritually. People have lost their loved ones for mostly wars for corporate, at least in the last 100 years, for corporate interests, as opposed to real freedom and liberty. I think the biggest fraud is this war machine. Go back to Smedley Butler. It's a racket. Using patriotism to have people believe that war is public domain videos. And I was happy to find that All Quiet on the Western Front by Louis Milestone was a public domain video, and I'm going to take some pieces out of it and utilize it. Probably one of the greatest anti-war films that there ever was, that exposes the propaganda in such a great manner. However, and it's very obvious even today with a little more slicked off version of the way the media and using education to bring people towards these nationalism and patriotism and, do for the fatherland, and so to speak. Powerful film if no one's ever seen it. All Quiet on the Western Front, 1930, one of the first sound films. Probably the best war film that was ever made. I mean, you take Private Ryan, you go into that, but you really want to see where they got their mojo from. You look back and see that movie. It shows the horrors of war. It shows the futility of war. It shows that it's a lie. What the people telling them to go to war, the schoolmaster getting all these kids to enlist, as it was in World War I. And of course they find out that it's not some, Boy Scout meeting. War is ugly. It's deadly. It is useless. It is, in the last century, with very few exceptions, it has been done to enrich and profiteer.
UN Agenda 21, bailouts, sellouts, Lehman Brothers, Goldman Sachs, false flag terror attacks, Bill Gates, anarchism, New World Order mind control, Bank of America stealing homes with cut and paste mortgage loans, police, state, taser guns, FEMA camps, man run, Monsanto rules the food supply while Big Pharma dopes your mind. Prison system, puppeteers, foundations, fund the beers, fund the evil through the years, the world's not as it appears. CIA smuggles drugs while Wachovia and Wells Fargo launder them, and give the proceeds to the owners of the Federal Reserve Bank. Now the IRS takes money out of every single check. Money they created out of thin air and leave you with debt. They want to make you a serf, a slave to their demand. They want to take your life in every way they can. Fluoride, GMO, vaccines, chemtrails, United Nations genocide. The world they show us is not real. This is how they kill and steal. Rothschild, Bundy, Rockefeller, Club of Rome. On the Georgia Guidestones it's written written in stone. Cut through the matrix, awaken to the lies. Do not be hypnotized. We are one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Interests, Vietnam, all of these coups the CIA implements and puts together, from the Shah of Iran down to Gaddafi, down to his demise. All of them have their heyday and then their demise. Controlling these people, working with them. Again, covertly. This is what's going on. I mean, we have drones flying across our country. I mean, unmanned aircraft. The Department of Homeland Security has launched a program to facilitate and accelerate the adoption of small unmanned drones by police and other public safety agencies in an effort that faces a very big hurdle to have to do with privacy. Oh yeah, well, they're doing it already. Privacy is out the window. The Fourth Amendment is gone. They're going after the Second Amendment. I should talk about that. But this is what's going on. I mean, can you imagine this? I mean, what else? We're going to have little drones flying, okay? These little drones, okay? They look like something, I mean, it's a good target. You know, I guess a good Mossberg 12 gauge, take that thing out real good, you know? Although I think they actually have armor shielding on them, so you'd have to use something with an armor-piercing bullet. Well, I mean, I don't know what to say about this. I just can't imagine having these small little... And there's a camera. If you look closely, there's a camera right here. There's a camera. So if you're against war or you're against the order of the establishment, you are not patriotic. Bush played that card. You're either with us or you're with the terrorists. That's an interesting oxymoron, right? Or double. It really doesn't matter. They're you know. I don't know what else to say about that. But we have elements in our government who are using all the propaganda possible to enrich their positions and mind controlling the public. With all of this patriotism, and it's very disturbing. It's very obvious. Obama and all these presidents, you know, with their you know, events at the unknown soldier's tomb, and all laying wreaths and throwing wreaths in the water, and the pomp and circumstance is just that, as far as this organization that we're trying to expose cares. I mean, we wouldn't be in any of these wars if it wasn't for these interests that we have elected officials, senators and representatives from our states, supposedly to help get jobs and help the economy of our states individually, correct? Yet, undoubtedly, they are in the corporate interest pockets with corporations that are taking all the loopholes and shipping all the jobs out. You go on the website of the White House. I was downloading some some videos today, some